our Signal Media Executive Interview Series. I'm Kimberly Underwood, Director of Digital News Media at AFCEA International's Signal Magazine. Quantum-resistant encryption emerges as a crucial cybersecurity solution for federal agencies. That is our episode today, which is sponsored by Palo Alto Networks. I'm speaking with Jim Smid, who is the DoD and Intelligence Community Field Chief Technology Officer at Palo Alto Networks. Jim has spent more than 25 years in the technology space, working across many capabilities, creating solutions and products for the federal and managed service markets. He started his career in doing software development, scripting, automation, and operations. Prior to joining Palo Alto, Jim spent 13 years as the CTO for Iron Bow Technologies, where he focused on developing and deploying solutions for the federal government. From 2004 to 2008, Jim managed the engineering team focused on the Army and DoD agencies for EMC Corporation, where Jim used his security and scripting background to create automated STIG scripts used by EMC in hundreds of deployments throughout the DoD. A STIG is a security technical implementation guide, specific instructions for building and maintaining secure digital environments that address such things as compliance requirements and security controls. Before his tenure with the federal government, Jim worked in software development, service providers, telecommunications, and managed services. Jim, nice to meet you.
Kimberly, thanks for having me. Nice to meet you too.
And given your experience, I think we could probably easily delve into other topics and the work you do across zero trust or cloud, data storage, cloud monitoring. With your knowledge of STIGs, I could even ask you about DIS's STIGs implementation. But today, I'm excited we get to delve into an emerging area, one that I don't know as much about, quantum-resistant encryption, or QRE. I do know that NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, about a year ago, selected and released a groundbreaking quantum-resistant algorithms. They had a contest, a 6-year contest, to see what algorithms could protect against crypto-analytic attacks from future quantum computers that may not even exist. And I know NIST is going to release its standards in 2024. Can you walk us through all about QRE? Why is it important and what's going on?
Sure. I think it's top of mind for a lot of us, and it's an interesting topic. A lot of people don't understand a lot about quantum computers, but you don't have to, I think, to really understand kind of what the fuss is about and why it's important today. They're already in development. Quantum computers aren't necessarily new, but in the next estimated 5 to 15 years, quantum computers will be able to decrypt a lot of our common security mechanisms, things like public key infrastructure, key exchanges. Those rely on current cryptographies like Diffie-Hellman. They're used almost ubiquitously. Every IT system has things really that rely on those cryptographies. And there's a race going on for who is going to be able to crack the code and be able to get into those sooner than some of their adversaries. You have bad actors that are utilizing those technologies and doing some things that we frankly don't want them doing. So specifically, I think what's going to happen is everyone is working on developing more powerful quantum computers. The current quantum computers are not powerful enough to do the decryption. They're also working on developing sophisticated algorithms. Typically, quantum computers are very specific in what they are trying to do, and they do it very, very well. So developing an algorithm that is specifically tuned and looking to break something like Diffie-Hellman and using a more powerful quantum computer, that's a very powerful solution to go in and potentially exploit some of what we know will be vulnerabilities. You think about how quickly those can be deciphered. It would take some of our traditional computers thousands of years to decrypt some of the keys and some of the things we use today, where a tuned large quantum computer with a good algorithm could break those in seconds. And wow, that really is what I'm talking about that race. I work a lot with the Department of Defense. You think about what that means for us, for our nation's security. Not only is the United States putting a lot of investment and effort into developing these quantum technologies, but so are our adversaries, and some of them are putting more resources into it than the United States. So it will be a huge strategic advantage the first country or the first actors that can establish and really start to exploit these technologies. So the race is on, and there's a lot of things that need to be done now to do something about it. And it's really from a two-pronged. One's from a more traditional, how do you break it? How do you understand which tools can potentially break it? And then secondly, and where we come in as Palo Alto Networks, is how do you defend against it? How do you keep these new algorithms, these new quantum computers? How do you put encryption in place that is post quantum protected? And so we're working on these post quantum cryptographies, or PQCs. I'll use that term quite a bit, to protect against these attacks now and in the future. And there's, I think it's really becoming top of mind, because it seemed far way off a while ago, but more and more we're starting to see that these technologies will be here sooner than later.
Right, sure. Kind of makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up,
For sure.
But can you kind of delve into that exposure? How bad does it look? You talked about PKIs and IK exchanges. Kind of what are the vulnerabilities and kind of the scale of those risks?
Yeah, I mean, the scale is really big. I think the biggest exposure right now that most people are worrying about is this kind of harvest now and decrypt later attack. That's a self-explanatory, I think, title, but in essence, it means that a bad actor could be collecting data. Once they have that data, they're free to decrypt it anytime they want to in the future. So they could save that data, keep it somewhere, and once they develop the right quantum computer and algorithm to go and decrypt that, they're going to have all that information that they want. So any information that's classified, any information that's sensitive, and combine that with information if it's also important that it's going to be relevant in the future, whether that's 5 years, 10 years later. So anything that you want to keep protected and be protected for a long period of time, the clock is already started. You need to be doing things today to prevent those harvest now and decrypt later type of attacks. There's one other kind of prevalent attack out there that isn't talked about that often, and it's a little bit more sophisticated. And the idea is that if you have a bad actor that has exploited or infiltrated your network, they can potentially put PQCs in your network. And there's dozens of PQCs out there. Some of these are open source. But the idea is if they could get into your network and they could establish PQCs within your network where they could do any of the things that they want to do to exploit you in the future, a lot of the tools available today would not be able to A, detect the PQC, or B, they wouldn't be able to do the same kinds of things they normally do for threat protection and things like that. They wouldn't be able to have visibility into the traffic that's going across that. So it's a good way for a hacker or for a bad actor to hide within your network and begin to do things. Palo Alto Networks helps with both of these. Our next generation firewalls, combined with the latest release of PAN-OS, we offer things that can help for both of these attacks now, and we can talk about kind of where these things are going in the future.
Right. Can you talk a little bit more about PQCs? That's the term I'm not familiar with. And can adversaries kind of, secretly put those anywhere in your network, or is it certain places are more vulnerable than others? Can you delve into that a little bit more?
Well, so what I'm really talking about is establishing a VPN between two different points. So if they had access into your network and they established those PQCs, and they were any traffic that was going between those 2 points would basically be encrypted by the PQC. So that would reduce the visibility of your current cyber tools to identify that. And if you have tools that aren't used to looking for PQCs, there are some unique things about PQCs that having tools like the tools from Palo Alto Networks will identify just the fact you have a PQC out there. So that's the biggest thing, is to eliminate PQCs on your network, right? Nobody's going to, even our tools would not have the ability to go in if there's a PQC to potentially see what the network is. So most importantly, you need to make sure that you can identify when somebody has started to deploy something like that within your network.
Right. And does that risk extend the cloud as well, or is that just mostly with VPNs, as you mentioned?
I mean, it could potentially be anywhere. I mean, anywhere that they could deploy a PQC and establish a tunnel or VPN where they could really hide the kind of attacks that they're doing.
Right, sure. And as you mentioned, you've worked with the Department of Defense for many years. What does this mean for DoD? And then the part B of the question would be kind of, and then the other federal agencies. DoD is kind of a unique bird, but maybe if you could start with them.
For sure, but there's similarities for everyone. And you mentioned NIST already. NIST has what they established a few years ago is kind of they shortlisted what were the potential PQCs that they would be standardizing on. The interesting thing is that over the last couple of years, two of those potential candidates, if you will, for the standards have been broken, and they've been broken without using quantum computers. So part of that is the problem that we are facing today is that we don't have standards. We don't know which things we're actually going to meet the mustard in the long term. Another one of the standards had some exploit to it, not a complete breakdown of the PQC itself, but it's just indicative of this is an ever-changing landscape. NIST is anticipating that they will, within the next few months, they will come out with what their standards will be. And that's really going to start yet another race. And that race, or maybe more applicable to call it a stopwatch, that federal agencies, once NIST has adopted the standards, federal agencies, including the Department of Defense, will be given a finite amount of time, 1 year, to start coming up with how are they going to embrace the standards, what would their budgetary things look like in order to accomplish these. So that strategy, you've got to roll these out across their enterprises. And this is going to be a complicated matter that certainly people like Palo Alto Networks will talk about kind of how we get into those. But the first standard that they're talking about is RFC 8784. And specifically that's around pre-shared keys. And there's some changes, some stipulations about how that needs to be implemented. And at a very high level, and just for people to kind of wrap their head around it, most of the tools that we have today, they use prime numbers as the pre-shared key, or the PSK. So there's a key that allows you, it's part of what you need in order to decrypt things. Also, those pre-shared keys are typically they're prime numbers, and they are actually shared within the traffic. So there's two vulnerabilities that are potential there. Number one, if you share that inbound or in traffic, it can be harvested, and people can figure out what the key is. And once they have the key, they can decrypt everything. The second is that if you have a viable quantum computer and the right algorithms, and you're using only prime numbers, it's a lot simpler for it to go through and break that. So there's some vulnerabilities around both of those. So RFC 8784 is really about mitigating those risks, and it's going to try to eliminate key harvesting, because you're going to share those pre-shared keys between two sites, and they will be out of band. You won't include that in the traffic. They can't be intercepted and harvested. Also, they won't be based on prime numbers. So that's really the first step, but it's one of many. This will be an iterative process in terms of what NIST will put in place to make sure that we are resistant to quantum. There'll be additional standards and technologies. There's a lot of things that Palo Alto Networks is already working on for keeping in pace with this and for supporting our customers going forward. We've really taken that leadership position to partner with our customers, deliver that best-in-class and open standards PQC approach to help them through this process.
Right, sure. And can you delve into kind of what are some of the solutions that can help DoD or federal agencies or other entities now, and kind of, I guess, what are you featuring and how does it work?
Sure. Yeah. So with the introduction just a few weeks ago of PAN-OS 11.1, we're delivering RFC 8784 capabilities, which I talked about. Those are all in our next generation firewalls. That's PAN-OS is our product to manage all those firewalls. And that really fits into the overall strategy of Palo Alto and what's always been our strategy. We are very much about platform. I think we're at a crossroads in the cybersecurity market where it's important that customers are investing in true partners that are delivering platforms instead of individual products. You want a platform that you can turn on feature and functionality. And that's exactly what we're doing with PQC. We're giving that functionality inherently to our firewall customers to turn on. That is exactly what we've done from day one with our firewalls. I think the analogy I usually make is that think of the dozens of different things that have become obsolete for most people when they just have their smartphone, right? They don't have, many people don't carry a watch. You obviously only carry a phone, a camera, a camcorder, a flashlight, a calculator. That's really exactly the type of thing we're talking about with our firewalls. And it's always been that case. We've started to include feature functionality like URL and DNS, advanced threat protection, even IoT and OT support all out of a single platform. So that platform has the capability of what used to be just a few years ago, lots and lots of standalone tools. These tools didn't share information very well. They weren't integrated very well. Every discussion I have around zero trust, it really revolves around consolidating how many tools are in place and integrating the tools you have together and accelerating adoption of zero trust. And how better to do that than to have a platform that, as net new capabilities are coming out, that's being introduced into the products you already own. You just turn on a feature, you don't have to do anything else. We've really focused for PQCs on three very, I think, important aspects about it. Number one, it has to be simple to use. And when you go into to manage your firewalls, it is wizard driven. It takes literally a couple of additional steps. Very, very simple. It has to be open standards, which means that it's not proprietary. It means any other tool, any other firewall, any other thing that is adhering to those standards, it's going to work with out of the box. We know we live in a hybrid world. We are concerned about our customers. We're concerned about their ability to have a cohesive zero trust strategy. And the only way to do that is to interoperate well with everything else that you know is going to be in the environment. The last is really about modularity. You're going to need tools that, as we look at PQC, those standards are not only evolving, but we've seen some of the proposed standards break. And it's not out of the question for standards in the future to be cracked or to be broken, either by a quantum computer or even by our traditional methodologies. And if that were to happen, you need the modularity to very quickly adapt and to change what you're using for your PQC. The future is going to bring more and more capabilities to use potentially multiple PQCs together. There's going to be a lot of flexibility and a lot of things brought to bear by platforms like Palo Alto Networks that are enabling customers to stay future-proofed and to do what is going to keep them safe.
Right, sure. And it sounds like from your, constant, that modularity you talked about and the releases that you're going to be able to provide solutions into the future as things evolve in this, evolving QRE environment. I guess how do you manage that? Do you you'll be looking out for what NIST is releasing, and how will you address what's needed in the future?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, first of all, we're working, we are the largest cybersecurity company in the world. We take that very seriously. We do more R&D than anybody else in the industry, and we also participate in standard creation. So we don't get surprised by what's coming out. We're an active participant in what to expect. We are already working on what will be the next phase of that. And the two things I mentioned before, open standards, everything should be open standards based. That's a philosophy we believe in. And that modularity, if things become obsolete, you need to very easily and quickly be able to replace them or use other tools. So that's kind of how we're trying to future-proof things, but we're very much a partner in this going forward. There's a few large federal agencies that are very instrumental in terms of what those standards will be. We have a lot of customers that have been in our open beta testing, not only of the product that was just released, but of future products. So we have customers giving us real-time feedback using our products today and telling us what they need out of them. That's how we delivered what we did a few weeks ago.
Right, sure. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention that makes Palo Alto Networks QRE solutions different?
Sure. I think some of it just ties hand in hand with what we just talked about, but I'll differentiate that with a lot of what we've seen in the marketplace up to this point. There's a lot of small companies. There was the potential of us to maybe try to acquire somebody to do this in a different manner. But I think there's a lot of limitations in what has currently been deployed for a lot of solutions around quantum resistant solutions. And think of it as a couple things. One is a lot of them are proprietary. So those solutions, they need the same technology on both sides. You need to start replicating that throughout your enterprise. That can become very expensive. And they're usually sidecars or they're add-on products. So you might have your firewall sitting there, and next to it, you have to, right in your rack, you're going to have to put whatever you're using for your PQC in the rack next to it. It's going to have to be put in line. It's going to have to take the traffic in and out. Another piece to manage. That goes against everything Palo Alto stands for. Palo Alto stands for don't buy new products, bring functionality into the products you already own, that already use. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it integrated. Let's make sure these work together. That's a huge differentiator for us. The second one really comes around that proprietary side of it. Because we're based on open standards and we have that modularity, we can change things out. If you use a proprietary system, what happens if that proprietary PQC is exploited? Now you have an entire environment that has a PQC that doesn't work, and you're going to have to figure out how to replace. How simple will that OEM make it for you to replace that PQC? What are you going to have to do? What will interoperate with other places? So again, it's kind of raising the bar by adding functionality into our best-in-class products and our best-in-class platforms, not only around PQC, but around things like experience management, bringing IT and OT under a single umbrella for zero trust. All of those are part and parcel to how we differentiate ourselves from really the rest of the industry. I think you're going to start to see a consolidation where a lot of these standalone products that can't be integrated out of the box and aren't part of platforms, they will go away. They'll go the way of the pager did with your cell phone, right? It's not necessary to have these standalone products that don't integrate well when you can turn features on out of a best-in-class product already that you're using in your environment today.
Right, sure. And what advice do you have for, people in DoD and federal agencies and other customers? What should they do next to prepare for QRE?
I'd say number one, find a partner you trust. We're embracing open standards. We're embracing modularity. We're trying to make it simple, and we can help through the process. For a customer, they need to assign some resources. This is coming. There will be the standards, that stopwatch we talked about. That's going to start very soon, within, I believe, the next few months. Who's going to be responsible? Get those responsibilities laid out. Part of this is then getting them to develop an inventory and a priority list. Think back to the beginning of the discussion. We talked about that harvest and decrypt later problem. All information, all data, all systems aren't created equal. Some are more important than others. So how do you prioritize what needs to be addressed first? How do you make sure that information that will still be sensitive 5 and 10 years from now, how do I start protecting that as soon as possible? Evaluate solutions, start testing them. I talked about our open beta program. Get with Palo Alto Networks, ask about the open beta program. Use not only the tools that we've already released, but we can start. You could start potentially kicking the tires on what's coming down the road, and then leverage that partnership to monitor what's happening, the progress. Obviously, Palo Alto Networks, we're very tied in what is coming down the road next time. But that's something that every customer needs to be doing for themselves as well. Keep an eye. Keep us honest, and make sure you understand what progress is being made around quantum computing and what's going to be the risk that you might potentially be at.
Jim, those were all my questions. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. It was great to meet you, Kimberly, and appreciate the time today. There's some additional information out in the on our web pages, and people can always reach out to me to talk about quantum.
Yes, they're for reference, and we'll put it on in the video, paloaltonetworks.com/industry/federal. Check out their latest Pan OS release 11.1. So all the best with your efforts. And it was nice to talk with you. And thanks to everybody for tuning in, and have a good day.
Thank you.